This reminded me of actually a startup.
Actually, yes. Oh,
Maren?
sorry, go ahead.
Can you hold that thought, Maren?
Yeah, Sophia's comment reminded me of like a startup that pitched to us not too long ago, which was really around grid optimization for EVs. Like if everybody in a city block actually was using EVs and had EVs, the grid today would collapse. Like you're not really set up for that kind of infrastructure and at global level, right? Like, so not just the US, but other parts of the world. And so can you have an intelligent layer that's able to manage this and do it at a sort of a microgrid level as well as at a national grid level? So there's some interesting ideas there, but yeah, reminding me of that. So I think teams are already thinking about that. And I would say perhaps even some regions outside the US are probably even more forward-looking, are able to sort of execute and make those infrastructure sort of investments happen with more centralized sort of decision-making.
Maybe you could step back and just tell us how you see the AI world that we should be.
Yeah, should we maybe set the stage a little bit, Patricia, or how do you want to do this?
I just wanted to add a really quick point on the topic of electricity demand and AI. A lot of really good questions. Stephen, you also asked a very good question on, how are we going to train these models? 40% of the electricity needs are for training. And we actually that's why we're excited to present C10 Labs as well, because we happen to sit at the heart of innovation. So Kendall Square, where we're based with C10 Labs, and we'll tell you more about it, happens to be the most innovative zip code in the world. And two of the innovations that I think will have a huge impact on electricity of AI are two things, and they're coming again out of the heart of MIT, is liquid foundation models, which are 10 times more efficient, and then decentralized AI, which is actually our third co-founder, who's not here, is actually the leader in that space, which is really removing these silos among building foundation models, silos among titans, right? Building them right now into a more distributed approach, sharing the GPU globally, etc. So that's a big thing, and we're proud to really be at the heart of where that's happening.
And I would say fusion as well, right? Like the Commonwealth fusion right out of MIT also, I think is probably among the 3 or 4 leading initiatives around the world right now.
Are you guys working with the former CEO of Stability AI, and not he stepped down, right, to start building?
To do exactly that.
Distributed, I saw that a couple of days.
Yes, our third co-founder and Professor Ramesh Raskar, who's professor at MIT. Yes, they are very close.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But we're not working as of now.
No, not as part of directly of the fund, but they are closely connecting on.
This is fusion?
So the CEO, his name is Ahmad?
Yeah.
Of the Stability AI, he recently stepped down, I think a week ago, to focus on distributed AI, both health and education. But Stability AI is like, I think it's based out of London, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a big thing coming. And maybe on that note, is this a good time to dive into our presentation?
I would actually love to share something really quickly, just based on the note of energy consumption and AI. Just because my advisor at Lightspace, my company, is started a company called Orbital Insight that aggregates the big data from satellites to the US and focuses on things like energy consumption, biodiversity, weather patterns, these types of things. Their clients are governments around the world. I dropped a link in the chat. So this is exactly what they do and what they have been doing for the past decade is to utilize AI to aggregate this data. So they have a really good sense of it. And when we launch our company Lightspace, because we work directly on the ground with eco properties all over the world, and these are the properties that are on our platform. So we'll actually have a sense of this big data globally. So that's actually one of the challenges that we are seeking to solve, is to get a sense of the global energy consumption and specifically who are utilizing energy, what types of energy solutions for their properties and their cities. So whether it be wind, solar, hydrogen, all of these types of power all come to play. And so when people utilize Lightspace, they can literally self-report what they're using. So that this is a data set that we will be able to access once we launch and share as well with people.
Great.
Yep, I'm excited. Thank you. You're welcome. Happy to address anything else.
Do you want to sort of level set? Like, I think you guys are like the people that could really give us like that the word was taxonomy of how we should be thinking of AI today.
Kick it off. Should we, we can do it as just a voiceover, or?
I love slides.
You love slides? How do you show slides?
Maybe start with our summary slide
Yeah.
again. So anyway, it's a pleasure to meet everyone. I realize I introduced our third co-founder, but I neglected to introduce myself. I'm Patricia Gielli. I am a co-founder together with Shahid and Ramesh Raskar. We're all based in Boston. I am a managing partner and chief operating officer. And we're really thrilled to be here today and celebrate Mark's birthday. So we wanted to, if you jump to the next slide, we wanted to start by giving you a quick summary and go into short team introductions, talk a little bit more about the AI and MIT ecosystem, as I mentioned, what strategy we have as C10 Labs. We're a venture studio, so we're a company that builds companies, our approach, and very briefly on how we do things, share examples of applied AI from our portfolio companies. And then the details about our fund. As Shai mentioned, we have a $100 million fund that we're close to closing, and then end with questions and answers. So yeah, on the founder side, maybe I just continue before I hand over to you, Shai. So yeah, I have a background in, I have a PhD in math, AI. I wrote my first AI really goes back a long time, right? I wrote my PhD thesis on neural networks back in 2005, when no one was actually interested in read any of the papers I wrote. Fast forward, neural networks is now the backbone of ChatGPT, and also spent 12 years at the World Bank working applied across all the economic sectors. Led large investment projects across 55 countries, and also led large artificial intelligence, machine learning initiatives, including one for the White House, and co-instructed AI for Impact together with Shahid and Ramesh at MIT. And this is actually a spin-off from that class that we have all been co-instructing. Maybe I will say also our third co-founder, as I mentioned, professor at MIT, has over 100 patents, and sold the company to Google last year, and really a rock star in the space. Shahid, over to you.
Okay, so just in terms of very quick intro, I think I've had a chance to meet a lot of you. I've been a founder, CEO of the last sort of 15 years, commercializing breakthrough innovation in Boston, mostly at the intersection of healthcare, medtech, and consumer, and broadly across applied AI in all of those areas. In terms of, so just diving straight into sort of the what we're doing at C10, right? So I think from opportunity and a landscape standpoint, we felt like there was a very clear white space in the ecosystem. You have early stage VCs, you have essentially real estate with some services, but you don't really have a sandbox where smart people can go and build high impact companies where there is alignment of resources, capital, expertise, to make it happen. And that model has worked really, really well. I'm sure you're familiar with companies like Moderna, among others, that have really sort of were incubated in these studio frameworks and studio environments where you bring the world's best minds together, capital, expertise, and really accelerate and build these exponential opportunities. So that, with that sort of background and sort of the vision is that, we're all experiencing this massive moment around AI. Can we build this meaningful platform where we're going to build the next generation of, Google, Facebooks, Apples of the world, and we think we're in the right ecosystem to make that happen. So how do we do it? We have a process around how we build companies, and it's really sort of what we also teach in our class, as Patricia said. It's a process that has been iterated across places like Google X, Facebook's hardware initiatives, F8, and then also at Apple across their studios. So Ramesh, actually, during his sabbatical, was one of the first people in some of these places really building and testing this process out. So that's the methodology that we use. The second piece of the puzzle is really around corporate partnerships, which is super relevant and important because if you're going to build AI, you need access to data. And a lot of the data in these regulated markets is behind firewalls and isn't really sort of accessible in the public domain. So we have a very concerted effort in terms of how we make that happen, where we're going to be announcing very shortly a relationship with one of the largest financial services company, one of the largest healthcare companies, where we'll have the sandbox for our companies as well as our ecosystem to build on. And that's a key piece of this vision for the studio to actually accelerate innovation, right? And sort of get rid of the inefficiencies. So that's where the corporate partnerships really kicks in. It's around go-to-market, externalization of data, innovation, scale. And often what we're finding out is that these companies are turning around and asking us to be in our fund to really sort of create alignment and exposure across a bunch of different things. And the third piece is really is around the brain trust. And we call this like the activated ecosystem, which is part of, being part of this academic early stage sort of brain trust across different classes that we're teaching, programs, and then a lot of the centers that are spread across not just MIT, Harvard, but other campuses in the greater Boston area. And then similarly, we're also I think we'll share a little bit more in detail later about how we're driving AI strategy for the state of Massachusetts. Even sort of about 18 months ago now, when we were really sort of starting to put these pieces together, we were fortunate to sort of help seed some of the initiatives that are now getting rolled out. So just very briefly, the model that we are using is quite proven to yield better results. So accelerated outcomes.
A little less on this part.
Perfect. So I'll skip that and really sort of talk about how we see to Mark's point is like where's the landscape, where's the opportunity, right? So this actually talks a little bit about where the market is right now. A lot of focus on LLMs. Compute is obviously is a significant demand right now, and massive investments going on that side. Foundational models really sort of getting a lot of the headlines. But if you look at 3 to 5 years out, the real value is in the application layer. So that's sort of our thesis. And it's not just us, it's people like McKinsey and PwC and a lot of other folks who were studying and have looked at this happen during the internet bubble, during the sort of the early wave of sort of e-commerce. A lot of the infrastructure players were the first to sort of have the wins, but then the real value, the exponential value, is captured by the application providers.
You had smart city and Paul's involved with the major smart city
Yeah.
initiative. Like how do you see the smart city opportunity?
Patricia, you've thought quite a bit about smart
It's in your
cities.
DC backyard.
Yeah, I
Actually, Paul, you
think,
wanted to say what you're doing?
Yeah, we have about 2,000 acres of land. That's 3.5 miles of Interstate 95, 5 miles of Interstate 95, going through in between Richmond and DC, and 3.5 miles of Amtrak. So we're working with the rail, the governor's office, and others to try to create a new TOD, right? And it's all a greenfield right now, fully zoned and nothing on it. So it makes it a very easy platform to start building. And then we're getting all kinds of data center requests and green energy requests. And the big question is, there's so much data center issues around that Washington, Virginia corridor right now. Can Dominion Energy support it, right? And the growth. So that's all these things that we're kind of reflecting on.
It's really timely, and we probably a couple of months ago, we had this event at MIT on campus called AI and the Built World.
Yeah.
The Built World comprises of construction, engineering, operations, design. And so the full stack of the Built World is really, and this is, obviously there's a lot of traditional sector, there's a lot of traditional industry and players in that, but few things that emerge. One of the things that we heard from industry players is like they're looking at anytime that, let's say there's $100 million project, they're allocating 30 million for reworks and inefficiencies. Literally, that's a line item for a lot of these mega projects. And that's, you take that at $1 billion, that's 100 million. So, it's quite significant, 30%. And so that's where AI can really shine. So all the way from like design, inefficiencies, reworks, we talked about buildings without architects, right? That kind of thing. I think all of those, I'm sure you've all had at some point experience of maybe designing a home. That is massively different as we move forward. Like, gone are the days where you're spending $100,000 on designs. I mean, that can happen in a day. You can walk through, you can imagine. So that whole paradigm is different. I don't know if you want to add something around smart cities, Patricia, anything else?
yeah, no, you mentioned a couple of examples, right? I mean, optimizing the usage of everything, electricity, waste management. I mean, there are so many things that go into traffic planning, all those things where AI can play a role. We're actually taking a big look at that right now. I think Shai will get to it in his presentation as well. Massachusetts, DC used to be my home actually for 14 years. So I'm very loyal to DC still, but currently based in Massachusetts with a company, and they just launched an AI task force, which has a goal to create the blueprint for AI, because it doesn't exist anywhere in the world actually. And so smart cities is one of those things as well. And I actually happen to be on the task force and lead this specific initiative as well on what that looks like.
Sophia's got I was going to call on you, Sophia, anyway, so go ahead. Actually,
Thank you. Super curious about, I see the bright orange or red. It's very exciting. I'm curious about, as we build these foundation models, like the biases, or like, because that is going to be the foundation of everything else, right?
Yeah.
So part of what we think about a lot is like generational legacy. What would be the effects, right? As we have this massive app infrastructure built upon, what might be a foundation that's biased or I'd be curious to understand, like, how are we caring for the building of the foundation, even though it might not bring the ROI as proportionally to the more, the red orange area here. And I was curious if that would be even like an area for the government to care for, or principled investors. There's a lot in the 360 environment. Super curious about that.
So Sophia, Hank Rogers, the co-founder of Tetris, was raising, like, we should root out evil, but then who's defining evil? It's all these value systems,
So you can actually use a sort of unbiased computer approach to that as well, because you can just, if we had, like, with the rise of quantum computing as well, and compute in general, if you were to simulate the world the way it would look like if we didn't have biases, then you can actually see, like the counterfactual, right? Like, so there are different ways of doing it. You can also have sort of responsible AI officers, and always actually making sure that you have representative groups. I mean, having been at the World Bank for 12 years, that's key in anything we do with data, to make sure that all groups are heard when it comes to actually selecting the data that we're training on, so that they can, whether it's gender or, other factors that we look at, so that they can make sure that their voices are heard as well, and can actually point out that there are biases. But there are different ways of doing it.
So the other thing about sort of where foundational stuff or this core AI piece is, I think we're in the dial-up phase, right? So which is, internet first came, we all have in this room, certainly, I would imagine, experienced dial-up. We're in the dial-up phase of sort of AI, where it's hard to conceive, everybody now, drop of the dime, doesn't even think about making video calls on your smartphones. That was clearly not something that people were envisioning at dial-up. They could envision at some point in the future, but there wasn't a direct line of sight. So I think we're going to see a lot of innovation and a lot of things that are hard to conceive right now, especially at the application.
and we have one more. Barbara's got her hand up. Barbara, you want to ask a question?
Yeah, I wanted to actually address what Sophia had said about bias. So I do have AI in my portfolio. I have 3 AI companies. One of my companies deals directly with the data bias issue. And so it's kind of crowdsourced, and it's kind of also you're correct on the data sets that you want to use. Like, what sets of data are you going to use? And then how do you also allow people to determine what data they want to see and not see? Because you're not going to 100% get rid of all bias, because bias is subjective. Like, what I feel is a bias may not be the same as everyone else. So if you can kind of say, hey, I don't want to see these things, but I do want to see these things, you can kind of eliminate bias, at least for yourself. Now, the secondary thing about a policy side, here in California, we do have laws around, one is coming in, I think 2025, it just passed it, around data and bias. And really what kind of data is being utilized from a state level, from a company level. And then this company that I'm working with has gotten pretty much on fire because California specifically said, hey, if you don't have certain types of data and information, then we're going to fine you around carbon, around DEI, ESG. Like, there's several sets of data now that people are trying to surface that already pre-exist. But now they're like, hey, we need help to get this done. And so this company is helping these VCs and other companies surface this information from a reporting side. So there's also that piece of the data side, the reporting and the governance.
Yep. Oh, Dale's got a question.
So I have a question and a brief comment. I'm grateful for the discussion with Barbara and others speaking about how to discern one's mission. In the Times today, some of you may saw Anthropic was which is a VC company, was led by Ford and Nathan Cummings and others, foundations investing in them specifically for that purpose. And that's more focused on the grant side, but it's all relative. And obviously grant size is very applicable to small companies. My question is, how is your company focused on helping service-driven companies? So I advise 2 PE funds, low middle markets. So these portfolio companies, we're talking about consumer services, infrastructure, and I love the conversation. I'm deeply in infrastructure and climate. And my question is, as it pertains to services, because that's obviously where a lot of redundancies are. And I'm curious if you have any applicability in your stack on that question.
I would.
If you don't, that's okay.
Yeah, no, I think we're sector agnostic, right? So we look at a bunch of different, and I think probably the best way to answer that would be to show you a little bit later on in our conversation, show you some of the companies that are working.
For now.
We can go directly there, yeah.
It's always good though.
Maybe just very quickly, so there's some context to what we will then talk about. And in some ways it's connected to service in other sectors as well, which is what we're seeing right now is like, there's a spectrum of AI products and services, right? So incumbents, people who are already in business, are really trying to enhance their offering and sort of finding the next sort of best AI service companies to sort of make things more interesting, whether it's consumer experience, whether it's, how orders are processed, whether it's supply chain, there's all sorts of things. And then there are companies that are doing product extensions. So they already dominate certain elements of the market, but they're adding an AI element that helps them sort of do adjacencies and things like that. Most of these efforts on the left-hand side are incremental and sort of largely focused on companies that are already out there. Where we're focused on, because we focus on creating fundamentally new platforms and companies and ventures, we're interested in building companies that can dominate or maybe reimagine the whole market. And the real value of AI is that what we've seen is that even, especially in the business process side of things are not better by 10x or 5x, which was sort of the norm for venture capital. Things are better by 100x, 50x, 1000x, 10,000x. And we have to really sort of sometimes take a double or a triple pass at really saying, okay, is this legit? Is this real? But repeatedly, we've seen this trend where, especially from process optimization, efficiency gains, the gains are quite radically different. And we can give you some examples of that as well. So where we like to play is really sort of creating what we call AI first companies. So imagine delivering it, either you capturing value or delivering value in ways that could not be done 6 months ago or 12 months ago. So fundamentally new white space that's emerging as a consequence of these multiple technologies converging and existing. And that's really interesting for us. And then certainly in sectors that are dominant, like healthcare, energy, infrastructure, education, AI-enabled platforms are transforming. We're going to see breakout companies in that space. But that's how we kind of, so just to set the framework a little bit, I thought that
companies in each of those.
So we like to, obviously we're playing from level 3, level 4 and 5, which is really, being able to capture and deliver values in fundamentally new ways, right? That's the easiest way to think about this. Okay, so maybe I can just skip through some of this, right? And Patricia, you want to highlight a few, some of this? And maybe I can explain, just set the stage a little bit, and then we can dive deeper into some examples. So we do a couple of things in the studio. We have a cohort program where teams are actually applying to be inside. They're in, or for the last time we ran for sort of 3 months, where they're coming and building with us, and they're running through a process. They're working with our mentors, advisors, and running through a process to really define their offering. The second piece is really where we're building companies from scratch. So now we have, actually, since we last met, we've got 2 projects, one in the built world space. So early stage of exploring how AI can radically reimagine some of the post-construction elements. And then the second piece is really building for large infrastructure like telecoms and cable companies. And how can you build an AI layer that can create 20, 30%, 40% efficiency gains, right? Just by adding this intelligence across the net. So we're kind of probing those two, and I use the word probing because that's the methodology we use. It's like, we identify an area and then we probe it using our process in a quantified way, talking to a lot of customers, building, iterating, testing our hypothesis. So that's kind of where we are. You want to talk through some examples?
Yeah.
Should we go into more detailed?
We can do that later. Let's just stay on this slide for a little while. So one of the things that you will see, and this is actually not all of the companies that we have, but these are representing the first investments that we made with our first cohort that was launched last year. We had more than 150 teams applying to come and build with us, and we accepted 15 and invested in a handful of them. What you will see here, the common denominator for everything we do is that it's actually high impact. It's real world applications. And that's really going to be where we see the most value generation going forward. Everything so far has been around the hype around the LLMs. Everything that's sort of core AI. It's chips, it's clouds, and it's foundation models that we hear about. And most of what you see is really the wrappers built on top of LLMs. There's a website called There's an AI for that. And that tracker stands over 10,000 companies built since ChatGPT was launched. But most of that is really what I mentioned, things that are easy to build, easy to disrupt. But where we're operating is really in the space that requires multi-dimensional efforts across sectors and data layers. And that's true for all of our companies. So just to mention one example, so Guidewire RX is a company that helps with early detection of chronic cardiovascular disease. So every year there's $3.6 billion, 3.6 radiology exams. 30% of the time, significant findings are missed, which means that these are things that might result in stroke and amputations and very severe consequences. Every year, there's over 1 million amputations. And so what we have done here with Guidewire RX is to really leverage AI to find those early detection. And just in terms of medical applications, when it comes to retina scans, for instance, it's been shown that if you ask a medical doctor, an expert, about the gender by analyzing the retina scan, they get it right 50% of the time. So roughly, that's exactly the gender distribution. If you ask an AI doctor, they get it right 98% of the time. So we are, of course, we're building early stage. So we're working with the companies through seed investment. And so we're hoping to get really as close as well. And that's where we are. So that's just one of the examples. We have also built, we're also working with a team that's looking at cancer immunology. And so really high impact areas. I don't know if you want to highlight any of the other companies, Shahid.
Yeah, I think so just very quickly, I would say we have a company doing AI for regulatory approvals for medical devices, massively complex, expensive process. And similarly, we've got a company doing AI for legal research, which is an area of interest, but they have a very specific point of view on what they're, and they actually just got a north of $1 million contract for landed their first customer. So it's been an interesting start. And then I would say,
Was that a big firm or a small firm?
that was actually, you want to share? I don't know.
So we can't disclose the exact details, but this is actually a third type of client, which is country-based.
Yeah, it's like
So,
basically there's an opportunity to reset the legal system
and so it's a massive market because it's something that's
that becomes the
relevant
dominant standard for the legal framework that's getting.
So we want to just, we want to transition to lunch in about 5 minutes.
Yes.
If you could sort of help us.
Maybe do you want to go to the 5 minutes, you said?
Yeah.
So maybe we can go to the financing details, Shahid?
Oh, yeah, sure. Maybe just one last comment would be one of the most exciting companies we have is that's allowing
The most exciting company.
A2 Labs, allowing non-NVIDIA chips to perform near NVIDIA performance. So it's a massive, I think there's a lot to unpack in that statement, but they're basically building this, they call a hardware-aware learning assistant that runs across various platforms to make code work basically across where currently it's a massive challenge when you're working in an NVIDIA environment. So really exciting opportunity there. And one other company I would highlight would be revenue cycle management for healthcare. This is a really nice sweet spot for AI where it's a lot of complexity, a lot of process heavy inefficiencies. And so we have a company that literally has moved it from like a 10 to 12 week process to a one click. And then all of that back end is automated where they actually have one of the largest client that has over 100 hospital systems right now looking to roll it out. So again, this is another example of where this is multiple 1000x improvement in efficiency and turnaround and cost structures, which simply existing businesses cannot match. So that's Patricia, let's maybe talk a little bit about